Oh, yes, now we're being joined by the Chairman CEO of the Nigeria Diaspora Commission, Madam Abike Dabiri. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you, Mokwe, and good morning.
Good morning. Well, just again, we've seen that just yesterday, the news came in that another Nigerian taxi driver, Joseph Ajuna, has been killed by gunmen in South Africa. We're not even sure if they're gunmen because we understand that he was stabbed several times by passengers whom he had gone to pick up. And this is coming less than a week when another taxi driver, another Nigerian, Benjamin Simeon, was also murdered under very, worrying circumstances. We understand that the taxi driver hails from Okposi in Ebonyi State, and he was killed in Johannesburg on August the 3rd, 2019. The statistics we saw there, 127 Nigerians so far, and this now adding to the numbers in less than 3 years. You have said
not the 127 less than in the last since 2016 it's 8, but before then 116 or 118. So
it is very worrisome.
It is very worrisome.
I mean, they're being murdered and they're not
but
dying.
I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
127. There are 20,000 murders in South Africa every year. In Cape Town alone, there used to be about 50 deaths a day. They had to bring in the military. So we're talking of a country where there's a very, very high rate of crime. But we're saying that, now there are 3 things in South Africa: xenophobic attacks, which we know, then very high crime rates, and then we also have some cases of cult drug wars by Nigerians killing Nigerians. But what we're saying is, no matter what, there must be consequences for actions. This guy that was killed yesterday, according to our Consul General, well, they are claiming, looking at a case of armed robbery, which is very high in South Africa, very similar to what happened to Lucky Dube, the reggae star, carjacking. That is the claim, but it's being investigated. And then the case of the other guys is also being investigated. But what we're demanding as a nation is, when will these investigations end? We've been talking about 8, for the first time, South Africa actually charged 8 policemen to court. But we want to know the outcome of the investigations. Ms. Elizabeth Chukwu's case has been upgraded to a very high-profile case, and we have a brigadier general actually being the one investigating the matter. So what the mission is demanding, and Nigeria is demanding, okay, you're telling us that you're not attacking us, you're telling us that crime rate is high in your country, but let us know, the results of all this investigation. So it's quite worrisome, pathetic, but the solution is not to close down businesses here in Nigeria or go picketing them or be violent. I don't think that is the solution.
But you have also said that we're reaching a tipping point. We're reaching a point where Nigerians might not be able to do anything about the whatever will happen to the South African businesses here. Is that the warning that you're giving?
Well, we're reaching a tipping point, yes. And we're hoping, and I'm sure once the minister gets back to office, the very first thing, one of the earliest things to do is to re-strengthen or look all over again the early warning signal put in place by both Nigeria and South Africa about 2 years ago. Is not working. So a lot needs to be done about that. And also before the end of this year, the 2 presidents will be meeting. But however, I mean, hearing the death of any other person, just any other person is so, like I said, we're reaching a tipping point, really. But South Africa is assuring us, we just spoke to them yesterday, and said, listen, it may be slow, but we're also embarrassed about this, and we'll do something about it. And the president assured that it's not about targeting Nigerians. It's about them dealing with a very high rate of crime. So it's very annoying, very sad, but we are demanding that at least let's know who committed these crimes. Even if it says some Nigerians are killing Nigerians, let's know them.
Do we have the capacity to really follow up? I mean, in the case
of
Tayo Faniro now, who you say that 2 police officers, the people who beat him up, are being investigated. Do we have any mechanism to actually really follow up?
The mission in Joburg. In fact, for the policemen, they go to court to witness the hearings. So in the case of Mr. Faniro too, like I said, the case is with the ICPD, and the mission is also following up. So as they update us as they progress, so we are going to demand, and I know that we'll know the outcome of this. Even if it's just an apology, they need to apologize to Tayo. And Tayo says he now wants to be the face of no to xenophobia. And we say South Africa should have the political will to do something. As he said, you don't have billboards or posters or jingles saying no to xenophobia. You know, you don't have anything like that. So they should have the political will to tell their people that you have to stop this. So they're not really doing anything to show us that, oh, we don't like what is going on. We're embarrassed about this. And then the last time we were talking, we met with the acting high commissioner. We talked about a cultural exchange between both countries. Like I said, my earliest remembrance about South Africa is Ipitombi. That's my first recollection of, oh, Ipitombi, when they came for Festac. When you see them, they tell you about Akia and Popo and all that. There has to be cultural exchange. Then there has to be education. A lot of them are ignorant. They have no idea of what happened in the past. If you don't know where you're coming from, how do you know where you're going to? They have no idea whatsoever. So they also have to be education. The Ministry of Education has to make a conscious attempt to educate them. And then NGOs, society groups need to work with the various communities, and we're working with that. And the Nigerian community in South Africa is also working with the other communities for enlightenment and education. But they keep telling us that their major problem is that crime rate is high. I mean, 20,000 deaths in a year. It's quite a lot. But we will not tolerate continuous killing of our citizens. It's too much and unbearable.
Now, you have said, because some people were wondering whether this is just lip service when they say that they're embarrassed. When Tayo points out the fact that xenophobia, this is not the first time we're witnessing xenophobia. I think even other South African
In the case of Tayo, it's just the luck that if he didn't record it, it would be just another case.
Yes. What was I trying to say now? In times past, Southern Africa, other Southern African countries have also complained of xenophobia, from South Africans. Now, if it has happened, for that long, and at a rate that, that has caught the world attention, so to speak, and a country doesn't have billboards, doesn't have jingles and things of the sort to sensitize its citizens that indeed this is bad, this is wrongful, can we really take them seriously about not paying,
that's what we're saying.
About paying lip service to stopping this?
But maybe they are. That's what we're saying. With when President Buhari came in and he insisted we take this up very seriously, that's when they arrested 8 policemen. They never did that before. But now we are telling them, and this we put to them, that you're not showing a concrete effort to say this is bad. So we expect that a lot of these things would happen as we move on. Because you have to show the political will that you don't accept this. But if you're not showing that will, it's going to continue to happen. That crime rate is high doesn't mean that you should kill. We don't kill people anyhow.
Will cultural exchanges really help? I mean, because Tayo is married to a South African, from what he told us.
Oh, really?
He is married to a South African. And he says he's settled them for so long now. Can cultural exchanges really help? Because by now, people would have thought that South Africans watching Nigerian movies and, having all of that soft exchanges would have been doing something by now.
It's one of the ways, but the key thing is for South Africa to prosecute those who have committed these crimes. You just have to show that, oh, what you did is wrong, this is the penalty for it. As long as there's no penalty, I mean, if you have some policemen being charged, that's the first step. You've never done that before, but let the investigation end. The person who killed Mrs. Elizabeth Chukwu, we must know what happened. We must know what happened. Somebody went for a conference, never came back. Even for the sake of South Africa, they also should want to know what happened. In the case of Tayo, they know the 2 policemen.
Do we have the CCTV now, the CCTV footage? In Mrs. Elizabeth
like I said,
case?
a brigadier general is handling. They took it away from the police. It's now handled by a brigadier general. So we've been assured that we should just be patient. They will conclude investigations. But we are going to be on top of the case. And like I said, when the minister comes to office, that will be one of the earliest things to do, to revisit the meeting with the Minister of Foreign Affairs in South Africa and review the early warning signal and come up with something more concrete that will really be effective. Because this is really, 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 we're begging the students, don't do this. But if we keep hearing every day another death, it will be difficult. But we've appealed to them, and they've agreed that, that may not be the solution, but it will get to a point where you can't just keep begging them anymore.
Well, let us go to Lagos now, where we have another guest standing by. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Mark. Well, let's get the perspective of a senior lecturer at the Department of History and International Studies at the Lagos State University. We're being joined by Dr. Dapo Thomas this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah. Now, to say that Nigerians are not happy with this development is perhaps an understatement. Now, while the political will, as has been talked about in South Africa, is one thing, perhaps more important is the political will of the authorities in Nigeria. From your perspective, do you think we're doing all we need to do? Are we doing enough as a country, as the authorities?
Well, first let me start from the foreign policy perspective, because I believe that your reaction or your attitude or your response towards any kind of detestable acts or any kind of towards behavior to your citizens abroad would first of all be stimulated by the character of your foreign policy. So if your foreign policy has a kind of docile, I mean it's docile in terms of its character, it's not active, it's not aggressive, then your attitude and your response too would definitely be a reflection of your foreign policy.
Okay, Dr. Thomas, I'd like to hold you for a bit. Let's go back to Abuja and get some more perspective. We'll be back to explore this. Markwe.
Well, we continue the conversations here. It seems that we're having some technical hitches in Lagos, in our Lagos studios. But, continuing this conversation here, do you think that we should, I think the Senate also brought up this discussion on the floor for debate. And one of the things I remember Senator Abike Dabiri saying is that we should issue a travel warning to Nigerians here. Is it something that we should be doing? Is it something that we're considering?
Well, it's something we've been doing, actually. Maybe not in the way, it's something we've been doing. When we tell you that there are 20,000 murders per year and all that, something we've been doing, but maybe we should emphasize it more. But you see, at this level, it's going to be in terms of policy. And it's going to be policy at the level of the Minister of Foreign Affairs with the Minister in South Africa. That is what we need to wait for. It has to be a policy decision on key steps to take about these issues in South Africa. That's just
because it's very worrisome. Here we are with a country advertising to Nigerians. We've seen them, advertising even on our local stations, asking Nigerians to come and visit South Africa, saying they have 155 million people to welcome us, so to speak. Encouraging us to come and spend our money there. Yet, we understand from what you're saying now, crime rate is high. The chances, I mean, if a whole star, Lucky Dube, a reggae star respected around the world, admired by millions of people around the world, could be killed under such circumstances. What are the chances that the average Nigerian who's just going there on holiday, couldn't be affected?
There are even many. Somebody just came back a few days ago. He entered a taxi from the airport, and then there were 2 or 3 people in the car. They robbed him of everything he had. He only begged them, please don't kill me. I'm only here on vacation.
That is a tourist.
Yeah, that's a tourist, and we heard nothing about it. Tayo, I think Tayo's case would be a blessing in disguise, because Tayo, unraveled to us what he's going to do about saying no to xenophobia. And, I like what he said, that we should not show hate but love. Because it's also very well known there. In fact, when he was locked up, a lot of their stars came there, and it was like, oh, well, we need to do something more about what is going on. So I'm optimistic that we're going to get results. But it's also important in terms of policy to have a strong policy statement at the level of the ministers. Both ministers should be seen to take concrete decisions about what is going on. Otherwise, it's going to happen again and again. And like I said, we must know the outcome of those investigations. It's as simple as that. Like last 2 cases, they insisted that, well, it's armed robbery, which happens every day. As that Nigerian was killed, there were some other South Africans that have also been killed. If you go to their station, there were several other cases. So they tell you it's not just the Nigerian. We also had other cases, and we're trying to deal with it. So in that instance, you will say they are targeting him. And I'm even told that taxi drivers are even bigger targets now, because they enter your taxi and then end up stabbing you. So what we're telling Nigerians, watch where you live, because areas also matter. Watch where you live, watch the company that you keep. And more often than not, try not to be alone. Those are the kind of travel advisories being issued to Nigerians. And more often than not, apart from Mrs. Elizabeth Chukwu, is more of those living there. And there are certain areas that are really, really, really terrible.
So perhaps we should have flyers at the airports, especially for those who are boarding, flights to South Africa, just something to keep them on the alert. But, let's quickly go back to Lagos now. We understand that that has been sorted.
Well, that's right, Mark. Now, Dr. Thomas, you have listened to some of the measures being taken by the authorities, travel advisory. Mark even suggested perhaps having a flyer or flyers at the airport. But you were talking about the policy direction of the government earlier on. So are we doing enough?
No, we are not doing enough, because the foreign policy of the nation, which is supposed to guide us in terms of our response, in terms of the kind of attitude which we should show our adversaries or our friends. You know, the foreign policy is not clear, it's not properly defined, the character is not defined. We don't know whether it's an aggressive thing, we don't know who the enemy is, we don't know what reaction we have to, what action to take against anybody who, you know, take for instance the American foreign policy. You know, irrespective of the relationship between Putin and Trump, the American foreign policy defines, the character defines Russia as an adversary. When you have a foreign policy which does not define the character of your interaction, I mean of those you are interacting with, then when something happens, this is what will follow.
Are you saying is Nigeria's foreign policy that is responsible for the attitude or the response of government to the killing of Nigeria?
Yes, this docility, because this is not happening for the first time. Several times it has happened, and now it is a matter of diplomacy. It is a matter of maybe we are still we are still engaged in kind of diplomatic discussion and all sorts of things. Now, when do we know how it starts? When do we know how it ends? How do you know when sanctions become necessary? How do you know whether, when retaliation becomes necessary? These are things that the foreign policy, the direction of the foreign policy would, I mean, if you have a very solid foreign policy, it gives you a direction, it gives you an attitude, it gives you a position.
Dr. Thomas,
yes.
Nigerians have been killed. Nigerians yes. are being killed, because as at yesterday we still had another report, and God forbid that something else happens again. What kind of, how would a foreign policy, the national foreign policy or Nigeria's foreign policy address that?
No, if it is, for instance, if we have an aggressive tone, if you have an aggressive character, it tells you...
By aggressive character, you mean?
Oh, I mean definitely that there must be retaliation, there must be reciprocation, there must be reciprocity.
What kind of reciprocity?
It's possible. You have sanctions. You see what is happening in the US. They have sanctions. They start with sanctions, degrees of sanctions. Do we have any kind of, do we have any sanction mode? Do we have any kind of research? Do we have any kind of action or response to any kind, I mean, this kind of thing? It is as a result of the fact that we have no idea as to how to handle this particular thing, either politically or either in terms of our foreign policy direction, that we are where we are. It's a stalemate. We are just in a kind of stagnation. We are just in one position. This is a position that has been since 1994, 1995, 2005, I mean 2008, 2015. We are still on the same thing. If it happens again, maybe 2020, 2025, we still maintain this kind of position.
So when you
because that is the direction now.
When you say there might be lack of ideas, perhaps now might be a good time to push out some of his ideas. So
yes.
how do you think this should be handled? I mean, how aggressive is too aggressive? I mean, you understand, you don't want to perhaps be too aggressive yes. and perhaps be too docile. So what kind of measures should be put in place?
Well, it depends on the extent of trade relations. It depends on the extent of diplomatic negotiations and diplomatic clout which we have over South Africa. You look for your areas of strength over your adversary. It is your area of strength that you concentrate on, and then you weaken. I mean, you take it from that position to weaken your to weaken your adversary. If you have a nation that is superior to you in terms of whatever capability, then it becomes a bit difficult. But if you are in Nigeria and then you have South Africa and then you have trade relations and then you look at the volume of relations and you look at the extent of diplomatic interactions and all sorts, and the political clout you have in Africa, then these are things which should come to bear. These are things you are supposed to utilize. But if you fail to either take any of these three, to either use any of these three instrumentalities against your adversary, then what are you doing? So where do you show your capability? Where do you show your superiority towards another nation that is every year, every time doing this kind of thing to you? And your citizens abroad. How do you now give some kind of confidence? How do your citizens abroad have confidence in you? If you are unable to protect them, if you are unable to even take their situation and then address their situation frontally and diplomatically, seriously as well,
Is it any relief what the chairman and CEO of Nigeria Diaspora Commission said, that the situation that is existent in South Africa at the moment is as a result of a very high rate of crime in the country? Is it any relief to you?
No, that is aside. But the problem is there are xenophobic attacks against Nigerians. For whatever reason, it's obvious. However, what is the Nigerian government doing?
Well, she has also, of course, you heard her list.
No. What she's saying is that they are following up the cases. In Nigeria, do you even have the moral authority to follow up cases? Because even here, some cases are being pursued for almost 10 years, 15 years. So now who keeps tab on the cases that she's talking about? Who keeps tab?
Do you
have the moral authority to even ask another nation to speed up action on your own on certain cases simply because they are related to, simply because you
are you in any way saying, Dr. Thomas, that
yes,
the South African government is complicit in all of this?
Definitely, because you can see the lukewarm attitude, you can see their reaction, you can see, every time they keep telling you we are investigating. This is a smoke screen. It's a diplomatic language to tell you that look, this one will pass over too. It's a diplomatic coinage. When somebody says, we are investigating, it's a helpless situation. What do you want to do? How do you speed up investigation?
All right, then, Dr.
It's unfortunate.
Dr. Thomas, Senior Lecturer, Department of History and International Studies, Lagos State University. Last two, thank you very much for being a part of this conversation. Well, Markwe, over to you.
Well, yes, I'm sure that, Madam Abike, you have responses to what he said.
Well, he's talking about moral authority. That I beat my child at home doesn't mean you should beat him for me. So, of course, we have the moral authority. And like I said, it was in the last 2 years, it was under this administration that they charged 8 South African policemen to court. And the mission in Joburg is monitoring the situation and demanding that we must know the outcome. And we will. The same thing with the lady that was murdered, we will. Tayo's case, we also will. So, but I agree also that we need a stronger policy that should be defined. And I've told you that that's at the level of the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And I'm sure the Minister of Foreign Affairs, with his counterpart in South Africa, will have to review what they put in place, which was called the early warning signal. They agree it's not working, and something stronger needs to be done. So I'm sure as soon as the minister is in office, that will be looked at. I agree, we need a stronger policy in that regard, but you cannot tell us that we don't have the moral authority to demand the outcome of investigations. We do, and we will. And we've told South Africa, okay, like the last one, they said it was pure armed robbery. As the Nigerian was robbed, others were also robbed. We were South Africans. You know, the case of xenophobia attacks against Africans in South Africa is something South Africa has to deal with. And I've also said several times that even the African Union has to intervene. It's a shame that in the 21st century, we're talking about Africans killing Africans, when we should be talking about, you know, Africa taking the continent to a higher level. We're talking about killings and all that. So it's something Africa should be ashamed about.
Let me quickly add this tweet from Toyin. He says, certain airlines traveling from Lagos to SA ask all Niger passengers to sign an undertaking that they will be at the cost of deportation if deported. Deportation rate is up almost a quarter of those who depart on the trip. Is this something that you're aware of?
No, I'm not aware of that, but we're looking. I know that their visas now, it takes a longer time. So you get a lot of complaints that you've kept it there for a long time and all that. But really, if you're going for one thing or the other and this is what you get, then don't go there. You know? But I haven't heard this. I remember some time ago, don't forget that these issues have been on for a long time. The South Africa airline just turned back a whole lot of passengers back to Nigeria. And immediately, both, you know, I was in Parliament then, Ambassador Ashiri was the minister then, we sent their own plane back too, and sent all of them back, and they never did that again. Then when they were charging 100,000 naira for visas, we did the same thing and even charged more, and then they stopped. So I'm sure there are things we also have to do in this. I've never heard about this. But if they send, I will look into it, but I'm hearing that for the first time. Nobody has come to complain about that.
About deportation. Well, we have to thank you again for coming on Sunrise Today this morning. Abike Dabiri Erewa is a chairman, a chief executive officer of the Nigeria Diaspora Commission. Sunrise Today continues in a moment. Please stay with us.
Thank you.